Okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And it's sad that we're not all together, but I'm glad that we could do this at least virtually and give everybody kind of an update of what happened in 2020 and give you an idea where we're going to head with the coalition over the next year. And welcome at this point, Jason Sturworth.
Thanks, Lori. For those of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Jason Sturworth, and I am the chairperson for the Substance Abuse Coalition. I also am the director of the Office of Special Projects for the 22nd Judicial Circuit's specialty courts. So again, welcome. I'm glad everybody took time out of their day to sit with us and learn about what we've been able to accomplish in 2020 as a coalition and kind of where we're headed. I know there's some really good information that people are going to share. One housekeeping issue is I would just ask that if you are not speaking, if you could please mute your device so we can actually make sure that we don't have some unforeseen circumstances happen where I would appreciate that. So again, welcome. This is the State of Addiction. This is the third year that we've actually done this. We continue to get a great response and we get a lot of people interested in what we're doing. I also want to share with people that the information that will be shared today, I would like people to just kind of listen. You don't have to worry about taking notes and things like that, because at the end, Lori will have her information up so that people can actually reach out and get a hard copy of some of the information shared today and some of the data shared today. We will make that available for people. So again, Lori will be reaching out to, if you're on the coalition distribution website or distribution list, you'll receive a copy. If not, reach out to Lori and you can actually, she'll make sure you get that information. So again, without further ado, I guess Lori's up first with some overdose data and some other data about the coalition. So I would pass it over to Lori.
So the first thing I want to do is just kind of give you the first question that always gets asked is, what does our overdose death data actually look like? So in 2020, we had 47 overdose deaths. That is up from where we were in 2019. You know, compared to communities around us, we did not fare as bad as communities. COVID-19 really took a toll. Honestly, we had the pandemic going on and the epidemic was still there, and people being contained and having significant factors like economic depression and health concerns and other things not being addressed did not help our efforts with the epidemic of opioids. And one of the questions we always got was, how did COVID impact us? And so kind of looking at the past few years, you know, I guess it's up to someone to evaluate a little better for me. I don't know that we saw this significant increase during the period of COVID in our overdose death data, but I would not say that we didn't have a significant impact during COVID. We have a very strong interaction group that happens at the street level with individuals who are facing this this use of opioids on the street. Those people who are facing it day to day in our recovery community and our harm reduction community are very strong. And so when we saw this happening, we reached out to Lift the Lolly, New Directions, the Warp Tour, and really made sure that our naloxone and our outreach for people who were wanting help and assistance during that time was really strong. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. And so while our overdose death data maybe didn't show it during COVID, I think you're going to hear more about what did happen during that time and why I think McHenry County didn't see that impact quite as strong during that time in overdose deaths. Just a reminder, if you could mute yourself, that would be greatly appreciated. So toxicology, you can kind of see our opioids are still a very significant component of what we saw in our deaths. It does play a component. Primarily fentanyl is our number one concern. It plays a role in every part of our in a significant part of our deaths. And where that really plays out significantly for me is in our cocaine. It may be that people think cocaine isn't an issue, but it is our #1 growing concern, our stimulants. Some people think it's meth. You'll hear that kind of coming out throughout the nation this year, is that meth is a #1 concern. In McHenry County, it is cocaine that we see before we see meth. Fentanyl can be mixed in with any other substance. And so potentially people are getting cocaine knowingly or unknowingly with fentanyl in it. And we have a large number of deaths that are starting to see with stimulants. And so you'll see the coalition starting to talk more and more about stimulants, specifically cocaine. Oops, sorry about that. That went really fast. So one of the things I wanted to kind of address was alcohol. You're going to see towards the end of our conversation today that alcohol has always been a concern. When we looked at the way out data, when we look at data with death that isn't specific necessarily to overdose, but other death data, we'll see that alcohol plays a primary role in addiction and in other concerns that we have. But in COVID, there was a significant change. Alcohol sales in April of COVID was a 533% increase. And that could just be that we were in lockdown and everyone thought, why not? But it remained very high, 180% higher in October than the previous year. And that's a significant number. And in May and June, Pollard et al. Did a study, and there was an increase of alcohol use of 14% over the baseline compared to previous years. Significantly, women between the ages of 35 to 50 saw a 40% increase over baseline in that year. And that would be bad enough. But then in October, there was another survey done by Grossman, Nielsen, and Sunshine. And they saw that there was a significant increase as well. 2/3 of the people in that study reported that they did have an increase of alcohol compared to pre-COVID time. And it was significant. They compared their data to data done in 2018. And if you look at the information below, you'll see that average days of drinking went from 4.8 in 2018 to 12.2 in 2020 in the same time frame. Now, this was a comparison of 30-day drinking. So looking at the past 30 days, that was the increase in a 30-day period. That's pretty significant. In that time frame, the number of drinks also increased. Binge drinking, which is 5 drinks for a male, 4 drinks for a woman in one sitting, was not all that significant, about 3%. But then the number of times that occurred, so 5 days or more, went up. Oh, it's supposed to be 3.5. Sorry, it says 7%. It's supposed to be 3.5 in 2018. So it doubled in 7%. So that's a typo, my mistake. So I kind of want to go back to the opioid story because each of my little pieces of data will play out with other people. And introduce Michelle Kavoris from Live for Lolly and have her talk a little bit about outreach and harm reduction and the role that it plays, specific to opioids, but also just addiction in general, and how that significantly reduces some of the concerns that we have in McHenry County.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Kavoris. I'm the program manager for McHenry County for Live for Lolly. I'm also a harm reductionist and also a person in long-term recovery myself, from substance use disorder, trauma, depression. Today I celebrate 4 years, 8 months, and 13 days free from heroin and crack and all kinds of other substances that I would try to fill voids with. So I just wanted to start out by talking a little bit about how Live for Lolly started. In December of 2008, Alex Laliberte lost his life to a accidental overdose, a preventable overdose, really a tragic situation that was fueled by lack of information. And that got his family wanting to raise awareness and educate and break the stigma. So that's how we started. That was 13 years ago. Little did they know how much work ahead of them there would be, but we have been growing, and basically our main vision is a world in which we prevent substance use disorder when we can, and offer compassionate support to reduce harm to individuals. Hello? And communities when we connect. So we work to reduce stigma, prevent substance use disorder among individuals, families, communities, and minimize the overall health, legal, and social harm.
Do you have it in the email?
Somebody talk.
Can we have somebody mute?
Sorry. So we do this through our 4 pillars, which include education, advocacy, peer-to-peer support, and harm reduction. A little bit about education. So we really just try to follow drug trends. For instance, recently we found Percocet, Xanax, Vicodin, pills that were being bought out on the street being cut with fentanyl, repressed, and just trying to get that information and education out to people. Also how to test for fentanyl in your drugs if people are using. We hand out fentanyl test strips and also teach people how to use them. And also in 2020, we got to educate 214 people on overdose education and naloxone distribution, which includes handing out naloxone. And that's, you know, because of the McHenry County Mental Health Board and the Substance Abuse Coalition, who we are so grateful that you guys brought us in and fund these opportunities for us to get this word out there. I don't know if your screen looks a little weird. I'm sorry for that. You know, technology, but advocacy. Our advocacy is anywhere from creating new bills and strengthening existing bills or laws out there to reduce harms. And also advocacy to us means meeting people where they're at. So if somebody is homeless and they need treatment or they need something, just advocating for them, because sometimes they can't for themselves. For instance, we have a participant that doesn't have a phone right now and he's living out in Tent City. If you don't know what Tent City is, that is in the woods living in a tent. And luckily during these frigid weathers, we've had great organizations like Hope Takes Action step up and house some of our friends into warmer elements than what they were living in. So unfortunately, now that it's warming up, they're back out there, but just connecting with them. Also peer-to-peer support, making sure that whatever recovery looks like to somebody, that they have those options to get to that, because we know that it's really about what their plan is, what their needs, their values are. So like I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous, but that doesn't mean that everybody would benefit from Narcotics Anonymous. So we try to find other things. Like I'm also a smart recovery facilitator, which is more cognitive behavioral therapy. There's also harm reduction meetings, which anybody can go to, whether you're a counselor, a mother, father, whatever, you just want to learn more about it, which is another great one. Or if you're a person that uses drugs and you just want to find somewhere that you fit in where you don't feel judged. We also have our CARE program, which I know you can't see really, but it's a program out of Arlington Heights that we can use for our McHenry County residents to get them into treatment. And mostly what we use it for lately is to get people on Suboxone for a month, and it's funded through ICESA, which can get us, can you guys hear that? I'm sorry. Which we can get people into treatment, and of the 325 people since the start of this program, we've gotten over half of them some kind of treatment, whether it was, can you guys hear me okay? Sorry. And then of course, harm reduction. So harm reduction means so many things. So if you wore a seatbelt in your car when you drove, that's harm reduction. But really, our harm reduction also includes just being aware of how to be safer, how to use safely, how to prevent spread of diseases. And we do that through needle exchanges. We do that through handing out boots, coats, things to keep people warm who don't necessarily have access to that. Tents, we hand out We also, in 2020, handed out 389 naloxone kits and hundreds of fentanyl test strips. So with that, 12 people of the ones that we handed out the naloxone to actually told us that they reversed an overdose. And we know that number's higher, but we know that people, because of stigma, are not necessarily going to come out and say, I just reversed an overdose. So we'll take the 12, you know, that's one a month. And like I said, we know that number's higher, and that's not even counting all the ones that police officers and EMTs have, you know, reversed. So you can go to the next one. So the next slide is about our values. In diversity, we're committed to inclusivity from our participants to our board members. Compassion, we know that the definition of compassion is suffering together. Every one of us that works at Live for Lally were touched one way or another by substance use disorder, whether it was the loss of a loved one or ourselves or somebody that's in recovery. I happen to be all three. So research and best practices includes connecting with institutes and initiatives all around the world to find out like what works best and be educated on the newest, like I said, trends and stuff. So history, we have to respect our history, because if we don't know what has or has not worked in the past, we can't change it or use it. So we use what worked and change what hasn't. Sustainability, we know that with COVID, that these numbers are going to grow. We know that the numbers of people who are homeless once they lift the evacuation ban is going to grow. We know that the work is not even near done. So being sustainable in our work. Education, again, promoting prevention, safety, and self-efficacy. When we know better, we do better, right? So our truck is out on Wednesdays right now in McHenry. We've been out there for a while now. And we just want to meet people where they're at, since, you know, it's hard for us to have people come to us necessarily, especially since COVID. We just want to be out there and present. We're in McHenry from 1 to 4 at AJM Auto, and at Woodstock train station at the Woodstock Square from 5 to 7. And we hand out different things from toiletries and PPE to safe syringes, or syringe exchanges, and safe sex supplies, safe use supplies, anything anybody can need, Narcan. If we don't have something for somebody, we'll find it for them. We will connect them with the resources so that they can get what they need. We're also in other communities, Cook, DuPage, and Lake County as well. And we are hiring. We are looking for more helpers in our area for McHenry County Outreach. So if you know somebody in recovery that might be a good fit, if it's somebody, whatever, we're here, we're hiring.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Uh,
All right. I'm going to move on because we've got to watch time. Here's Michelle's information, Alex's information. We're going to, again, share this information with everybody. You'll also get a book that will also have some information on Live for Lally as well. Sorry, this got cut off, my mistake. So Bobby Gatone from New Directions, talking about recovery support.
Thanks, Lori. Yeah, my name is Bobby Gatone. I'm the Executive Director of New Directions. For those of you that are not familiar, we've been operating for about 10 years now. We started out as with the Other Side Sober Bar in Crystal Lake years ago, expanded into 3 sober living homes in Crystal Lake. We just opened the New Directions Retreat in Woodstock in January, and also operate the Connect to Recovery program. And as of August, took over management of the A Way Out program for McHenry County. I don't want to spend the whole 10 minutes talking about what we do, but I really want to talk about the state of peer recovery and recovery services for the county. But, you know, a little more about what we do to just let you know. So we focus on recovery housing. We have 47 total beds available at any given time for people new in recovery. That ranges anywhere from initial 90 days of housing to a next up to 12 months of housing and sober living to 3/4 living, which is basically independent apartments that have some added support of case management. We, a lot like Live for Lolly, we work, pretty closely with Live for Lolly, and a lot of things we have in common is we do focus on peer support as well. So just about everyone in our organization, as well as on our board, has direct experience with recovery. A lot of you probably know Chris Reed, who founded the organization. I myself am in recovery. I've lost, my father died of a heroin overdose when I was young. So I've been on both sides of it, as has most of our staff. And so we focus on peer recovery services, which I think we need more of in general, as well as in the county. It's been a big help to have like Live for Lolly come out in recent years and do what they're doing, and for us to add from our end in New Directions a lot more housing capability as well. But I still think there's a real big need for certified recovery coaches, which I know Lori's been working on, and just more peer support for people. I think it's easy to take for granted how many people there are out there every day that are entering recovery, whether that's walking in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Smart Recovery. And a lot of these folks, for 80 years now, have been able to walk into a meeting and find a sponsor and fellowship with people and have that direct contact, which is really important. And what we've learned this year is you can do those meetings on Zoom like we're doing right now, and that's great. But when you're brand new to recovery and it feels like almost everything in the world is already working against you, it just makes it that much harder. Not having that face-to-face contact, being able to walk up to somebody and ask them to sponsor you in the case of the 12-step programs. So, I'll start by saying that's one of the big things going on right now, obviously. The COVID-related isolation affects people, obviously, with their mental health and people with substance use disorders. Not only these individuals looking for sponsors and new meetings and things like that, but we've seen anecdotally a whole lot of people with established sobriety that are relapsing. We've seen people left and right relapsing in the past year. And it's because you're taken out of your routine. You can't have that in-person meeting that maybe you counted on for people in 12-step programs. And you go back to the isolation, which makes it easier to drink and use. Unfortunately, the reality is not just in our county, but nationwide, that oftentimes you can pick up the phone and get pretty much any drug you want within 10 minutes delivered to your house, but it might take you 12 hours to try to figure out a way to actually get into detox when you actually want help, which is the underlying kind of problem going on. I can say that we are very grateful to be operating in the county that we're in. I think we do an excellent job of coordinating between agencies. I think in just the past couple of weeks, I've talked with folks at, Gateway, Rosecrans, Substance Abuse Coalition, Workforce Network, McHenry County Drug Courts, Live for Lolly. So I think we're doing a great job of working together to kind of shore up some of these service gaps, which is a big strength that we have going for us that I think we need to keep pushing. Also, the support of something like having a mental health board, the Substance Abuse Coalition in place, the state's attorney's office supporting us. I think all these things are working in our favor, which is another reason why, as Lori mentioned, I think we've fared a little bit better than some of the other collar counties as far as overdose rates and things through COVID. So we do have a lot of support services out there. Another thing that I wanted to mention that I think is crucial is awareness. I think that's still an issue. I think we have a lot of support services out in the county, and I think it's just a matter of getting the word out to folks that are still using, folks that are interested in coming into recovery. My background, New Directions and general background, is more so in 12-step AANA programs, and I can speak to that. And it's I don't think you can quantify. I don't know if it's ever been quantified how much value there is to an Alano club. And they kind of work behind the scenes, and we see these, you know, all over the county, you know, McHenry, Crystal Lake, Woodstock, and the value in having these buildings that are open with meetings running all the time that people can just walk into. And I think we've seen in the past year how when they shut their doors, how difficult it can be. And I think a lot of that burden has come back on some of the other service providers to try to keep up with phone calls and service navigation and things. I can tell you it's getting better. A lot of meetings are opening in person. We're hosting more 12-step meetings at the other side facility in Crystal Lake again. We do HA meetings, family support groups, AA. We're open to NA and Smart Recovery. We just haven't gotten them up and running out of the building yet. So what else to mention? Another thing I would point out, as far as just a lot of you may already be aware, but if I'd be remiss to not mention the glaring issue in the county, I think right now, is that we do not have a medical dedicated detox facility. And the reality is that a lot of people coming into recovery, even ones reaching out to Michelle or I or other service providers, we're needing to take them oftentimes 45 minutes, an hour out of the area to find detox and placement. And it's not easy. I literally just spent, you know, about 15 hours with somebody last week trying to get them into a detox program. And I do this every day. So you can't imagine somebody walking in off the street trying to get their child or friend help. It's not always easy. And I think that's a big impediment that hopefully we can work to resolve in future years here for the county. The other thing I think would be really helpful that we see is just more peer recovery staff out there. Like I'm excited to hear Live for Lolly's hiring more folks. We're looking for another case manager right now as well. And we're looking to get them trained and certified as recovery coaches as well. And I think that's going to be a big help. I also just want to mention with the transition of the Way Out program for McHenry County this year, I think there's been some concern or question on if it's still going, what the capacity is. But I just want to remind everybody and let everyone know that program is up and running. We are fully staffed, and we are still able to help folks that come in through local police departments to get help. We will help them also if they just call into the Way Out phone number. We've helped people, you know, everywhere from after a recent overdose on where to go next to actually getting into detox and getting into treatment and possibly even sober living. So I could also, Lori, I'm sure you're going to share out some contact information for a Way Out. I didn't include it on the slide. So that information will be in the packet too. But thank you all for being here for this today. So.
So at the end of the session, we're going to have some Q&A. You can also feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll keep track of those and ask them at the end. But we're going to shift a little bit into why we want to move on to some conversation. Not that we're going to let go of conversation about opioids or stimulants or anything like that, but a little bit of conversation about why we're going to head into conversation about alcohol. So I want to introduce Sheila Lockwood, and she's going to share her own personal story as we talk about why alcohol is important.
Give me a call as soon as you get a chance. My number is 815-479-7572. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm really nervous and I'm probably gonna cry, so. First of all, my name is Sheila Lockwood. On June 10th, 2018, Austin Lockwood was murdered by a drunk driver. He's my oldest son. I had the privilege and honor of being Austin's mom for a very short 23 years before he was senselessly and cruelly taken from me. I have been a single mom for more than 21 of those years of his life. I worked really hard as the sole supporter for my kids. The most important thing in the world to me was to be a good mom. Austin always had a very special bond. Not only did he look and act like me in many ways, Austin looks just like his older sister, Taylor, who I lost to SIDS when she was 4 months old, 28 years ago tomorrow. I could look at Austin and know that this is how his older sister would look. Big, beautiful brown eyes and a warm smile that lit up the room. Austin was loved by all. He would lend a hand to everyone without ever expecting anything in return. I've heard countless stories on how he helped people and refused to take anything in return. He helped everyone, including family, friends, and even our elderly neighbors. Selfless only begins to describe my son. Ultimately, that selfless behavior is what cost him his life. Austin went with an acquaintance to help clean up a summer cabin. No one else had the time to help and clean it. No one but my Austin. His kindness was paid back by taking his life. Austin was a passenger in the vehicle. The 21-year-old driver had a blood alcohol of 0.117 almost 3 hours after the crash. He was going 70 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. My son was taken from me upon impact. He was gone when the police arrived. I was notified by 2 McHenry police officers at approximately 5 a.m. on Sunday, June 10th. I later watched the entire crash from the police dash cam. That was horrific for me to hear and watch. Losing Austin has been a blow that affected me physically, mentally, and emotionally. I've been going to therapy every single week since the crash. I've got anxiety and depression. I've had 4 ulcers in my eyes from crying. I was hospitalized on Bereaved Mother's Day in 2019. My days are filled with trying to establish some sort of normal routine, but there's nothing routine about my son not ever coming home. I have had a hard time focusing and completing simple tasks. Nothing will ever look and feel the same. A dark cloud will always be over me and those who love Austin so much. As a mother, you're supposed to help your children through difficult times, but this is something that is unfixable. My pride for having such wonderful kids has turned into a feeling of failure because I can't help them. I'm not able to make their lives happy and whole again. My life has been ruined while the killer will only get 3 years in prison, and then he'll be out to carry on with his life. Our laws are not adequate and our system is not just. I feel the criminal has more rights and less consequences than the victims. It's become my mission to change this. I've been to Madison, Wisconsin many times, working closely with representatives and senators there. I've spoke at public hearings to representatives, to senators. I've even been in the governor's office in Wisconsin twice to sign new drunk driving bills into law. I've met with State's Attorney Keneally. I've also had the privilege of working with Lori. She's been wonderful. I've worked with Representative Tom Weber, and we've been trying to pull together some law to get all states into one database for drivers. We've met with, I have met with Senator Durbin's office and Senator Duckworth's offices. I've been pushing for Austin's law. His initials are ALL. All states should have to report into one database. I work very closely with MAD. I'm part of the Illinois Impaired Drunk Driving Task Force, and I attend their meetings. We've done the Walk Like Mad for Austin 2 years in a row. I've also had my company donate $2,000 to Flight for Life, the McHenry branch and the Waukesha. We were up in Waukesha for the donation. My company did that in honor of Austin to help keep their educational group going so they could talk to schools and children, young kids about drunk and impaired driving. I've even had a couple of billboards done for Austin. Most recently, Austin's former boss and I have joined forces and are making lanterns in honor of Austin and all victims. Austin worked for a fencing company, so we're taking the excess fencing material, it's 100% recyclable, and donating all profits to MAD so we can help end drunk driving. We call them Austin's Lanterns. Since the crash, I've tried really hard to make a change. As much as I wished I'd been the one taken on June 10th, I wasn't. I don't ever want this to happen to another family. The problem with all the penalties we put into place and trying to make laws more strict is they're after the fact. After another senseless murder, we have to educate people on impaired driving, and we have to put an end to people getting behind the wheel impaired. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, for being so open and so vulnerable. I know it's a tough thing. I wanted her to share her story. You're going to hear a lot of data now. You're going to hear a lot of kind of pull points. When I think about what happened during COVID, one of the things that occurred was that in an effort to support our economy and open restaurants and have things available, there was a temporary law that was changed, and that was that alcohol could be delivered to homes. You saw the change in the alcohol. I gave you some rough numbers. That law is sitting on Governor Pritzker's desk, and we're monitoring it. It made it through the House and the Senate already to become permanent. When we look at that and we see that alcohol could be delivered to homes, which will allow alcohol to be used more frequently, there's no guarantees what that will mean to our rules on the how that will play out in alcohol use as a whole. But when alcohol use goes up, it's hard to have it just come down naturally on its own. And so there is a lot of discussion in the prevention world and in the treatment world as to what will that be reflective of when people go back out to restaurants, and what will our DUI situation look like when it comes back out on the road. Because people will go out, and if they're used to drinking more drinks at home, will they drink more when they're in restaurants? And so I think that this is a concern for our community as we start to reflect on as we unwrap COVID and people start to go back out into, quote, the real world, and what will that impact look like? I think this is something that we really need to focus on, and hopefully McHenry County, that's been progressive in a lot of other categories, can be thinking forward and be progressive as well. So we'll move forward into some data. Jeannie Ong and Keely Gallagher are here to kind of talk about what they already know, and we can move forward.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Sheila, for your story. I think one of the things that we have to remember as we look at data is that every piece of data is a person, and has an impact on, is having a personal struggle, and is having an impact on every family and other families as they move forward in their life. One of the things that we think is very important is that hospital systems and healthcare systems play a critical role in both access to treatment and access to recovery and connection to recovery. And so every 3 years, as part of a requirement as a nonprofit hospital, every hospital in Lake County, ourselves in Northwestern, are required to do a community health needs assessment. We actually do this in a collaborative with all of the hospital systems and McHenry County Mental Health Board. It's as was mentioned earlier, a very collaborative and coordinated process. As we have looked at the data for not just this past period in 2019, but actually for many periods before that, for many community health needs assessments before that, we have identified that the top issue in substance abuse is alcohol. It is seen in the emergency department data and in hospitalization data, et cetera, as really the #1 substance of concern. And Keely Gallagher, our community health coordinator, is going to go into some detail from our most recent community health needs assessment for you to kind of give you a sense. And then I'll loop back around at the end and tell you a little bit more about how we want to tackle this. So Keely.
Thank you for that introduction, Jeannie. As she said, I'm Keely Gallagher. I'm the community health coordinator at Good Shepherd. So before I start diving into this data, I did want to point two things out. All of our hospitalization data is not just advocate data. It's from the Illinois Hospital Association. So it can be from any healthcare system, from Mercy, Northwestern. We pull it up by the resident's zip code or the county that they live in. And then the second piece is that the way that it is color coded is green, yellow, red, as you can predict, better to worse. Green being in the top 50th percentile, yellow being in the 50th to 75th percentile, and for lack of a better term, that red is the worst 25th percentile. Unfortunately, when we do look at alcohol in McHenry County, you're not going to see a lot of green. McHenry County is in the red for ER rates due to alcohol abuse at 55.8. Almost all of these zip codes do pop up in the yellow or red categories, with the worst being Union, McHenry, Woodstock, and Harvard. The age zip code, the ages that pop up are 18 to 24 and 25 to 44 in the red zone. And males did have much higher rates for ER rates due to alcohol abuse than females. Again, this is all pre-COVID, so it will be interesting to see what it looks like on the other side. Next. And this is hospitalization. So it is that the person had such severe alcohol abuse that they did need to be hospitalized, not just in the ER. McHenry County, again, is in the red at 23.2. Almost every single zip code in McHenry County did unfortunately pop up in the yellow and red categories. Again, the worst being Hebron, McHenry, Wonder Lake, and Woodstock. It does shift a little bit in the age. It is 25 to 64 popped up in those two categories more, with males again remaining at much higher rates than females, being in the red category. Next slide. So this is adolescent alcohol use. They do put it a little different. In McHenry County, for the ER rate is 14.5. That is much higher than the Illinois value, which is at 10. And for hospitalization, again, McHenry County did have a higher alcohol use rate than the state, McHenry being at 5.3 and Illinois being at 4.8. So across the board, it is much higher. Next slide. And then adults who drink excessively. McHenry County was in the red at 23%, while Lake County was in the green at 18.4. It will be interesting to see how our surrounding counties of Lake and Kane look when we come out of COVID. But McHenry was higher than the Illinois value, which is 21.1, also higher than the US value, which is at 18. Next. This is the alcohol impaired driving deaths. McHenry County and Lake County are both in the red zone for this indicator. McHenry County is at 39.4 and it is trending upwards. Lake County is at 37.1 and it is trending downwards. This is pre-COVID, so next year we'll be able to look at what we looked at during 2000. But right now they are both still in the red. And then this is a heat map. I wanted to show you this because it is an updated 2020 map. It looks at excessive drinking. So the Illinois value for adults that participate in excessive drinking was 21.6%. This gives us the Illinois state rank at 43%, 1 being best and 50 being worst. If you look at where you see those dark states, a lot of them do surround us, unfortunately, and the state that actually ranked 50th was Wisconsin. So us being right there at 43 and Wisconsin being at 50 does not look good. And then I wanted to show you this. This is also from the America Health Rankings. So if the darker is Illinois, the darker color, and the lighter blue is the US. If you look at gender, both males and females have higher percentages of excessive drinking than the national data. Same with income. Across every single income bracket, people who live in Illinois have more excessive drinking than the US rankings, the percentage. Same with every single race, with white adults having the highest. Across every age group, those in Illinois are higher than the US percentages. And across every single education, I think other than slightly less than high school. But across the board, in almost every single category, you will see that Illinois has higher percentages of alcohol and excessive drinking than the US. And then I'm going to hand it over to Jeannie to kind of explain a little bit more how our CHNA works and why we chose alcohol.
So part of what we do when we look at the data results is we have a committee at each of the hospitals that looks at the findings and helps us to identify the priority areas that we want to work on for the next 3 years and beyond. And so in Good Shepherd Hospital in 2019, after looking at the data and actually beginning to work on in 2020 before COVID hit, our committee decided that the focus really should be substance abuse. Some of the data around alcohol use, certainly the change in the marijuana law, and the data around opioid use in the county were convincing factors, convincing data sets. But one of the things I think that was really important for us is that they heard the message around alcohol and said, yes, this is definitely a health issue that needs to be worked on in coordination with other community members, within the Substance Abuse Coalition. And so we are now starting to little bit come out of our work around COVID at the hospital system and are now starting to develop our plan around addressing alcohol. Usually in our work, we typically try to work on prevention and defined evidence-based programs. And so one of the things that we are gathering now is you know, we just recently heard mentioned about Illinois MAD, and a couple of weeks ago we met with the Illinois MAD executive director just to find out changes in policy, changes in processes, changes in prevention and education programs that exist that we could even connect in and support in the work that that organization does. So more to be developed, certainly, but substance abuse was prioritized not only by our Good Shepherd Council at the hospital, but I'm the director over the North Region, which includes Sherman Hospital in Elgin and Condell Medical Center in Libertyville. And actually our councils at all 3 hospitals have urged us to work on substance abuse as our primary priority. So we are also looking at regional approaches as well. So I just want to offer that if you are interested in as a member of the Substance Abuse Coalition or others are interested, please reach out to myself or Keely. We would be more than happy to talk further about interventions that we could work on together. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we talked about, youth is one of those places that we need to start and look. And so we reached out to Rose Krantz, who does a lot of our work with our youth, especially as it comes to substances and mental health. And so, Mary, are you on?
I am here.
All right, let's start your slide.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity to put our collective heads together to serve the needs of the residents of McHenry County. I appreciate this opportunity. So I'm the Director of Outreach and Student Assistance Programs in McHenry. The next slide. And Rose Krantz has offices in 3 locations and provides a variety of services. The next slide.
Oh, sorry.
I want to go through these first couple pretty fast. Rose Krantz provides assessments in all of our locations. intensive outpatient and substance use services for teens and adults. We also partner with the McHenry County Mental Health Board to provide the school-based services in McHenry County to remove those barriers and to help with those referrals that are coming from the schools. And then we also have adult services and psychiatric services as well in McHenry. And the next slide. So the data that I wanted to talk about today is about the trends we're seeing with adolescents, as we're in the pandemic and with COVID. And so in McHenry County, from 2019 to 2020, the number of adolescents served or admitted has gone down. So what we know about that is that, students are not in school, there's less professional eyes on them. And so those numbers have gone down. Just a note to mention here, the reference, the number of adolescents served versus the number of adolescents admitted. So when students or clients are admitted, they might expand over the calendar year. So we wanted to reflect how many were in services during that time period. Now, what we're starting to see is this trend of the percentage of adolescent admissions with the primary diagnosis of alcohol use disorder was 1.4% in 2019 and up to 3.3% in 2020. We're starting to see that inch up. And on the next slide, we're taking a look at our residential treatment center, which is entitled the Rosecrans Griffin Williamson campus, is where we treat adolescents from age 12 to 20. And so again, the numbers of clients or adolescents served and admitted has gone down, as we know. But the number of adolescents with a primary diagnosis of alcohol use disorder has gone up almost 5%. And I'm going to reflect on a study by the Journal of Adolescent Health and Medicine that really shed some light on these numbers. This study was done in this past September, and the title is, Adolescent Life in the Pandemic, Less and More Substance Use. And what the study is saying is that there are two motivations for teen use, and we kind of know this, right? That kids use for social enhancement, they're with their friends and they're with their peers, or for coping. And so for those kids that are using for social reasons, they're really not using regularly or as much. And so their use has decreased. And they're not using as much because there's not as much social opportunity for them to use. But even so, with that reduced use, those teens are still using with their peers. As much as a third are continuing to use with peers, either in person or online, or sharing their use on social media. For teens who are using to cope, the study highlights that they are drinking alone, and especially those with depressive symptoms or anxiety related to COVID. And so their use has gone up. And of course, we know this, that there's a link between substance use and mental health disorders. And so we see that trend in these numbers here, that it has gone up in our residential treatment center by as about 5% in this past year. The study also reflected that, as Laura, you mentioned in the beginning, that alcohol use was higher among adults. And so this trend reflected down with the teens, that the teens were using with their parents. And so once the shutdown occurred, and so, is that because parents are more permissive, or parents using more themselves, or parents, saying, okay, this sucks, you can't go out, all your regular school sort of social opportunities are no longer here, we're going to let you use. But of course, what we know is that parent permissiveness really can tend towards escalating a teen's use to heavier drinking, because it presents that double standard. So So I think that study really reflects well on what we're seeing here in our numbers, and certainly some work to be done moving forward, in terms of the coalition and prevention and education and those kinds of things. So next slide. Important context for Rosecrans. And I know, Laura, you said you will be sending those out as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you again. Additional information. So McHenry County does have some things we're trying to do already, and I thought it was important to share that. So Pat, I know I saw you jump on here. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me start out by just saying to Sheila Lockhart, what an impressive presentation that was. I remember when you came into my office a few years ago and we're just sort of looking for how you could make a difference. You've gone from the lowly state's attorney's office to Senator Durbin's office, and how you've honored your son with your work is just incredible. And your heartrending story just really underscores the importance of the work that all of us on this call do. So I just wanted to say thank you for not only everything you've done, but also for sharing with us today. I want to say thank you to Lori for giving me the opportunity to discuss DUI court. Maybe Jason Sturworth might be the guy to do it, but I'm sure he's been tasked with another presentation. But the whole thing started, I don't know, Jason, it was maybe 3 years ago, and I was up in court administration hanging out with Jason Sturworth and Dan Wallace, and we were just sort of chewing the fat. And I think we had recently gone through a drug court graduation, and we were all kind of basking in the glow of, like, look at all of these people, how they've turned their lives around, and look at how they've just sort of been reformed, body, mind, and soul, and how they've repaired relationships with their families. And it's just a really inspiring event for anybody that hasn't been there. And then that sort of integrated with a conversation that I had with Judge Prather, who is no longer a judge, but just about DUI cases in felony court and just what difficult cases they are. And I can talk about that just in a second. But we just got to talking like, hey, like, why can't we, like, why is there a drug court, but there's not an alcohol court? And why can't we take many of the same principles that we use for drug court, whether it's sort of the strong connection with the court, the weekly meetings, the timely accountability if somebody has been truant or is not complying with whatever the course of treatment is, and this whole team structure where people are just really wrapped up in all kinds of support for whatever need, emotional, educational, employment related need that they may have. Like, why isn't that something that we can do with alcohol cases? And of course, the leading case where people with alcohol problems generally kind of come to the surface is DUIs. And so we just sort of got to talking and began developing the DUI court. And we applied for a grant with the feds. And I remember we applied for the grant, and then the time period for which they were supposed to respond to us came and went, and then 3 months came and went, and then another 3 months came and went. And then all of a sudden I get a breathless phone call from Jason Sturworth saying, we got a letter and we got the grant and they're giving us this amount of money. So we're hiring a clinician and we're off and running with the DUI court. And this is really one of the things that I at least am most proud of as my tenure here as state's attorney, just because I really think it's made an impact, and I really think it's kind of changed the way in which felony DUIs can be approached. So under the current structure, somebody that's charged with a third time DUI, and it doesn't have, you don't necessarily have to have been convicted in the past, but rather this would just be sort of your third arrest or your third violation. You can be charged with a felony offense. The fourth arrest is mandatory imprisonment. And the fifth arrest, the penalties, the length of imprisonment that you face go up. The sixth arrest and plus is a Class X felony, which other than murder is the most severe penalty that anybody can face. You're looking at 6 to 30 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, and a lot of the good time credits, like the day-for-day credit that makes a 4-year sentence really 2 credits, is not available to you. So these are really serious penalties that not only put people in prison, which we all know is very expensive, for prolonged periods of time. When you're looking at sort of this population of people that are getting DUI felony offenses, it's kind of curious, and they don't look a lot like the other people that I see every day and that Jason sees every day. Rather, most of them are they have this veneer of functionality in their lives. A lot of them are blue collar, many of them are older, most of them are men, most of them have jobs and mortgages and houses and families, and certainly don't self-identify as a quote unquote criminal, and certainly don't self-identify as somebody who the state would want to put in prison for long periods of time. And so when their defense attorney, I'm sure, goes back to them and says like, hey, the offer is 8 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, I'm sure many of them are terrified and bewildered. So the problem with a lot of the DUI cases is that when police investigate them, especially the felony DUI cases, they're investigating them as kind of a misdemeanor offense. And for those of you who may not know a ton about the criminal justice system, usually the amount of resources that get put into an investigation, which strengthens our case, is contingent upon the seriousness of the offense. So a murder is going to get 10 detectives and crime scene analysts and all the rest of it, whereas a misdemeanor retail theft may get a police officer, certainly not a detective, and the length and the nature of the investigation is just going to be a lot different. So when you're investigating a DUI and a police officer is just sort of under the assumption that it's just going to be a misdemeanor offense and isn't aware of the fact that the person may have 4, 5, 6 prior DUIs, the quality of the investigation, and I don't mean to disparage police officers, but the quality of the investigation is not going to be comparable to, let's say, what we're normally used to with a Class X type felony investigation. And so a lot of times we don't have the strongest cases. And in addition to that, somebody that's been through the system on a DUI multiple times has become kind of system sophisticated. And what I mean by that is DUIs are a lot different from a lot of other offenses, which is the body of the evidence is essentially upon the person who's being arrested. They have a unique ability to control it. There's no, the crime scene is the person, what they say, how they think, how they balance, what they do, and some of the decisions that they make. And somebody who's been through it before and has had a good defense attorney instruct them sort of how to avoid giving the state evidence for DUIs can do a pretty good job of not doing it. So for example, they really don't have a lot to say to the police officer. They're unwilling to conduct field sobriety tests, and they're unwilling to give a breath sample. A lot of times all we're left with is bloodshot glassy eyes, a slurred type of speech for the little that they've heard, and a smell of alcohol, which when we're talking about proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt is kind of difficult. So we have these really strong penalties, but not the best investigation. And a lot of times what that means is it kind of creates a standoff in the courtroom where the case is sort of languished. They threaten to set it for trial, looking for a deal. We're unwilling to move. And so, like I said, these cases can just kick around for a long time. And so we sort of got to talking as whether or not there's a better way. But in addition, we wanted not only a better way in terms of how to resolve these cases from a procedural standpoint, but also a better way where we have somebody 5, 6, 7 times who's committed DUIs. We've seen a lot of times the criminal penalties haven't brought the corrective, haven't had the corrective response that we've wanted. So why are we just going to keep doing the same thing? And we inferred that if we could just resolve sort of the underlying alcohol problem, that the chance of this person recidivating would be dramatically reduced. So that was the logic, and a lot of the credit goes to Jason Sturworth, a lot of the credit goes to Dan Wallace, a lot of the credit goes to Judge Fedier for being willing to try this. But this really is the very first type of program in the state, and I don't even know about the country, but the whole idea is to take drug court principles and just apply it to another category of substance abuse, which is alcohol. And I think that what we've seen is it was a really good idea, and it was a really good idea because it's been very successful, even more successful than what we're seeing in the drug court. So we started on September 11th of 2019. Like I said, it's the first of its kind. I think we envisioned 40 participants, and we've already worked up to 38. The average age, as I talked about, is a little bit older, especially if you compare that to drug court of 50 and a half years. And the population is 85%. That's a typo. What I meant to say was the population is 85% male. And I don't think we've had any dropouts so far. And we've only had sort of 4 instances where we've had a person who went back to drink. Now, if you compare that to drug court, that is significantly better, both in terms of a dropout rate as well as the relapse rate. So we expect to have a graduation, I think, sometime this year, where we'll have 7 graduates. And so far, and based on all accounts, this is a little bit more compliant of a population than drug court. I think we have a good reason to be hopeful that it's going to be a population that has less recidivism, both in terms of when you compare it to drug court graduates, but also when you compare it to people who are sent to the Illinois Department of Corrections on a DUI offense after they get out. So hopefully it will make the roads more safe. And I really think that this is going to be a model and it is going to be ubiquitous statewide in the next 5 to 10 years, because it really has been such a success here. And I know that it's garnered a lot of interest. So that's all I have. Thank you all for your attention.
So could I just add one thing about the DUI court? So we've been hearing a lot about alcohol statistics and the engagement of a larger population in Illinois using alcohol compared to across the United States. 100% of the participants that are in DUI court, their offense is related to alcohol. There is no DUI that's a drug charge that's in DUI court as of now. So they're all related to alcohol.
So DUI court's one of our resources. The drug court is one of our resources. And I think Bobby mentioned too, like, we just need awareness. McHenry County is truly wealthy. And the best advocate we have in our system for that is Scott Block. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him do what he does best, which is just really advocate for everything we have in our system.
Thank you, Lori, and thank the coalition for allowing me the opportunity to address today's audience. Overwhelming amount of data and information shared so far, but I'd say perhaps most importantly, in mirroring State's Attorney Canale's comments, hearing from Sheila, who courageously shared her story, certainly puts a face to why we're here today. And although, Sheila, your story is unique to you, you're certainly not alone. When I looked up some stats to share for today, I found from the National Center of Drug Abuse Statistics that pre-COVID, 11.7% of the US population over age 12 have used illegal drugs within the previous month. 19.4% of people aged 12 or older have used illegal drugs or misused prescription drugs in the previous year. If alcohol and tobacco are included, the number of Americans who currently use and abuse substances climbs to 60.2%. 60.2%. I don't know about everybody else on the call, but I can't think of many other issues that have that type of universal impact on all of us and our entire community. The fact that we're all here together sharing this information is a testament to McHenry County and what we've heard about our coordination of services and why we continue to hit this problem head on and try to develop new services and address gaps that exist. And we're fortunate that we do have a significant amount of resources available to us here in the county. We know from today we've got a dedicated substance abuse coalition. We have our criminal justice system with judges and the state's attorney that are willing to hit addiction head on in the courtroom and in the community. We've seen that through the drug court, the Way Out program, the DUI court, training within the probation office, so on and so forth. Many of things that the court has done to address this. I believe on today's call, we have the county coroner who's also active in the Substance Abuse Coalition and is willing to promote the pitfalls of addiction and do whatever he can to bring awareness to this topic throughout the county. Obviously, we have various treatment providers that have devoted their time and their practices to helping people find a path to recovery. And I believe Bobby said very eloquently that we do have a strong 12-step and peer recovery culture here in McHenry County as well. So we do have a wealth of resources available to us, and certainly would be remiss if I hadn't mentioned the Mental Health Board levy. This was the levy that was created and supported by the community to provide funding for the necessary planning, maintaining, and strengthening of all of these local resources. When I speak about local resources, I often talk about the comprehensive set of strategies that we have in place and refer back to when we really wanted to target the opioid epidemic head on. We took a look at the Office of National Drug Control's policy recommendations, and no stone went unturned. From life-saving efforts, including law enforcement and public access to Narcan, the Way Out program, school-based prevention services, drug take-back programs, adult and youth outpatient treatment services, medication-assisted treatment, the drug and DUI court, recovery homes, sober living opportunities, many strategies are deployed. Of course, some of these need to be strengthened or enhanced, but no part of the continuum of services has gone unaddressed here in McHenry County. As we've learned today, we may need to renew our effort to bolster our responses to increased alcohol abuse. Despite of all these efforts, we still lost, I believe, 47 lives to addiction in our community this past year, and certainly stigma still exists. It was just a short few years ago when Live for Lolly was starting to operate in McHenry County, and there was a significant amount of pushback against harm reduction. One need do no more than try to open up a sober living home to see what type of stigma still exists around addiction in our community. So the 70 people on this call have a lot of work to do and a lot of influence that we need to continue to provide throughout the community. Barriers to treatment still exist. As we've heard, we still have a couple gaps, one being a dedicated detox unit, but we are working with partners to address any of the existing barriers. Although the need in personal connection for all this is higher than ever due to COVID, our commitment is strong and the resources that we control are allocated responsibly and effectively. Leadership's engaged and the community is well aware of the toll addiction is taking on the families and institutions in McHenry County. Moving forward, the coalition and the Mental Health Board plan to continue our current efforts while developing new strategies to target these gaps in care, reducing stigma, and promoting recovery resources wherever we can throughout the county. Of course, we can't do this alone, and everyone listening today can play a part. So I ask everyone here to stay informed, engaged, and active in the ongoing fight against addiction. Join the coalition mailing list, host a naloxone training, or simply encourage an open dialogue about addiction whenever the opportunity arises. Help reduce the stigma that's attached to 60% of our community members by accepting the science that tells us addiction is a disease and not a character flaw, and promote that hope is out there and people can and do recover. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I wanted to let everyone know that for the first time, the coalition wants to recognize our community supporters. It's been important to us to realize that the coalition doesn't do anything on its own. Our members and the community around us has served us very well. And so it's important to us to recognize those people. And so Lindsay and Connie, if you are on.
I am. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Keisman, and I've had the privilege of being on the executive team with the Substance Abuse Coalition now for about 1.5 years. And I want to open up our Choice Leader Award by just explaining a little bit about us and why this matters to us. So, you know, the McHenry County Substance Abuse Coalition Choice Leader Award recognizes superior professional engagement activities in our community that honor our vision of changing community attitudes about substance abuse. This award is conferred upon individuals and organizations who demonstrate significant contributions to our community, while also exemplifying the coalition's core values, being a role model in community engagement. Our mission is to mobilize the community to build a unified focus and empower all residents to participate in substance abuse awareness. So I'm going to pass it along to Connie, who's going to introduce our first recipient.
I'm Connie Machini, and I'm on the executive committee of the Substance Abuse Coalition. And we want to recognize Aptar Group has enhanced our ability to advance our mission by increasing awareness of and access to services by collaborating with local providers and providing Narcan kits that were distributed to over 500 individuals that are in need. In addition, Aptar supported and helped the community partners in enhancing recovery peer support through residential development and offering employment opportunities. Aptar is a wonderful group that has been around in the community, and we really honor them, and we're thankful for them. So
it's my privilege to go on to the next recipient, which is Scott Block, who I don't need to introduce because he was the gentleman speaking right before us. But Scott has been such a valuable advocate with the Substance Abuse Coalition, and some of the many things that Scott represents is his ability to increase awareness and access to services. He collaborates with and unites community members and is always providing needed information, educating community members, and are always such a strong supporter of our sustainability plan to develop the use of evidence-based strategies. Scott, you are a passionate advocate, and we're grateful to your tireless work towards the Substance Abuse Coalition. So many thanks.
Okay, the next person that we want to honor is Sue Murray, and she's enhanced our ability to advance our mission by increasing awareness of and access to services, reducing stigma in the community, and providing information and education in the effort to change the social norms. You have used your voice, Sue, and we really appreciate it with the Woodstock Independent and putting articles in there for our Substance Abuse Coalition and others to respond and advocate for families and people who have substance abuse disorders and proudly walk in recovery. We thank you, Sue, so much for helping us get the word out. Thank you.
So the McHenry County Substance Abuse Coalition, we're so grateful for the support, reliability, and leadership that all of you have shown as we support and build a community that is more effective at addressing substance use and abuse issues for individuals and families. Together, we can continue to build a safer community. And at this time, I'd like to invite any of the three recipients, if you have any comments or would like to share anything, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Well, I've never been one too afraid to jump in first, so I can certainly just say, you know, obviously when I was informed of this recognition, it was certainly a surprise, and I was flattered, and it just, you know, was definitely validating for all the work that I think we have collectively been able to accomplish here throughout the county over the years. And for me personally, I just looked through the list of about 70 people that were on this meeting today, and I'm probably one of the few people that are in the fortunate position to know almost all 70 of those individuals, if not all of them. And to me, that just really illustrates the work that we do here, and that it does take all of us, all different sectors, institutions, community members. So there's no greater recognition, obviously, than that from your peers. So thank you, guys.
Welcome.
Scott.
I would just like to thank all of you. I've gotten to know so many of you in the past couple of years as I've written about these issues in the county, and you're unfailingly generous and patient with me because this was not something that I knew a lot about before we started. And I certainly want to thank the Woodstock Independent because they're the paper who wants to keep these issues in the forefront and see people as individuals and help them. So thanks to you all.
Thank you. Is there somebody on from Aptar, do you think?
I didn't see a name I knew. We
Who
would,
doesn't? Let's say, who doesn't know Aptar? They're all in the community and helping out.
they are. They're always busy, which is maybe why they're not here right now. Recognition will also be going out as a press release. So, you know, Sue, the Independent, will post their own press release, I guess. And we really appreciate it. Awards and so forth with all that is going on will be shipped to you, unfortunately. I wish we could be doing this in person, but it doesn't make it any less personal. I personally can't picture doing my job without all of you. You've been vital to the role I play in the coalition. So thank you all. And as we go through this next year, if you all think of people who you feel deserve this award next year, I would appreciate hearing from you, because I think sometimes the best recognitions come from the people who receive it the year before, because you in your head know what it meant to you. And so you'll see those people as you work through your own year. At this point, if you have questions, you can choose to unmute if that gets a little unruly, or if you're not comfortable with that, feel free to put any questions, whether it's about the presentation or any other questions that you have. Feel free to put them in the message in the chat or just unmute.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself to everyone. I know a couple of people here. My name's Colleen Bledsoe, and I recently graduated from George Williams College, or no, I'm sorry, from Aurora University in Woodstock with a BSW, and I am now earning my MSW at George Williams College of Aurora University. And my interest is substance use disorder, as they say, or substance abuse. My husband passed away from cirrhosis of the liver due to his use of alcohol and illegal drugs. And I had a niece that passed away due to too much fentanyl being in the dose of heroin that she got. So I am very committed to doing something to help the community and to help with this problem. So I just wanted to let everyone know who I am and why I'm here. And, you know, if you think you have any info for me or anything that would help me out, you can reach out to me. Laura has my email address. So thank you.
Okay, if there's someone on who jumped on who did not receive an email directly from me, whether you received it through the coalition or another group that you were associated with me for that I forwarded information out to, and you want to get either a copy of the PowerPoint presentation or the additional information that we'll be forwarding out, please take down my email. Just shoot me an email saying, hey, I want this PowerPoint, or add me to the email list if you're not already on my email list, and I'll be glad to connect with you. If you need information in the future, if you need referral to somebody who's in our group, I'm glad to help out with that. I appreciate everyone taking the time. I know this is a little bit longer than we normally go for any of our meetings, but I think it's really important. I've gotten lots of personal texts and private messages on the side about wanting to participate as we move forward with our alcohol conversation. And I will reach out to each and every one of you who contacted me. I think that the alcohol conversation is critical. I think our data definitely showed that. I think that we have a lot of concerns. If alcohol is going to be delivered to someone's home, you know, do we know for sure we're really going to protect someone who's under 21? I think there's a lot of questions around that. You know, as we unwrap COVID, I think there's going to be a lot of mental health and substance use questions that are going to happen as we unwrap that and people kind of enter back to the real world.
I apologize.
So, go ahead.
Mention talking about alcohol being delivered to the home. I do DoorDash, and DoorDash can now deliver alcohol without food to the home.
Correct. There's the House bill that's under consideration for permanent will change that. DoorDash won't be able to do it. It'll be a certain party. To give you an idea, I did research on it, and Uber just purchased Drizzly, which was the ownership of that contract, for $1.1 billion. So if you don't think there's a market for direct delivery from restaurant to home, $1.1 billion. Someone's thinking there's going to be a good market for it. So I think there's going to be a lot for us to look at as a coalition. And if that's your interest, like I said, you can shoot me an email. You can send me a private message. You can do whatever you need to do. But I do think we're going to see this based on the numbers we saw today. I'll be honest, Rosecrans sent me some information that in today's message that I was not aware of, which makes me even more curious about some things. So I think we'll have a lot of conversation. And the more people engaged, the better the results long-term for McHenry County. So I appreciate all your time. And I hope that we will hear from all of you. Jason, anything else from you?
No, I don't have anything, Lori. Thank you again, everybody, for your time, and to our award recipients, well deserved. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your information.
Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you. Thank you.